All right, so we're going deep on H.H. Holmes today.
One of America's most infamous killers,
Absolutely, and we're using his Wikipedia entry.
which honestly is a gold mine of information.
Oh, it is, even if you've read The Devil in the White City.
Get ready for some stuff even that book left out.
Yeah, so our goal kind of is to separate uh, the fat from fiction, right?
Right. Cut through the sensationalism, get to the core of what we know for sure.
Exactly. So who was H.H. Holmes?
Yeah.
Like, what really happened in that murder castle?
And how did he get away with it for so long? I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredible.
So to even start, like, who was he?
Well, he was born Herman Webster Mudgett
Okay.
back in 1861. Seemingly normal childhood, devout Methodist family in New Hampshire. Yeah. But there are these incidents early on that, looking back, you're like, huh.
Almost like foreshadowing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that story about him being forced to touch a skeleton as a kid.
Most kids would be terrified, but he was supposedly fascinated.
Right. And then dissecting animals. I mean, not that unusual.
No, but combined with the other thing, maybe a preoccupation with death anatomy,
The body, the mechanics. of it.
Right.
So fast forward, med school.
Yeah.
He wasn't like the best
Right,
student.
but excelled at anatomy. And there are these rumors about him and a professor, like, robbing graves for cadavers.
Is there any truth to that?
It's tough to say for sure. I mean, records from that time are spotty,
Sure.
and the story might have been embellished over the years. You know how it goes.
But it's interesting that even then, that early, that connection.
Right, to the macabre,
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
unethical.
And it's not just grave robbing, right? He was allegedly using those cadavers for insurance scams.
Oh, yeah. This is where you start to see the cunning and manipulative side come out.
So wait, explain that. How does that even work?
He'd take out life insurance on these non-existent people, then use the cadavers to fake their deaths, collect the payouts.
Wow. So already comfortable exploiting death for profit.
Right, even before the murder castle.
Yeah.
It speaks to a certain detachment, willingness to treat human life as a means to an end.
Okay, so 1886,
Yeah.
arrives in Chicago,
Yep.
reinventing himself as H.H. Holmes.
New city, new name, new opportunity.
Right, for this.
Yeah.
And this is where the legend of the murder castle really takes shape, right?
Yeah, so he buys a drugstore.
Okay.
Then an empty lot across the street starts building this massive structure.
And the rumors about this place, secret passages, trapdoors, gas chambers.
A crematorium.
Oh my gosh, was any of that true?
Not really. The media, especially back then, they went wild.
Sensationalizing everything, sure.
Exaggerating every detail, Yellow journalism.
So the murder castle was more hype than reality.
To a point, yes, there were hidden rooms, odd architectural features.
But not some elaborate torture chamber.
Right.
But he did kill people there. I mean, he's not called H.H. Holmes for nothing.
Oh, absolutely. The murder castle might not have been what people imagined,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make the crimes less horrifying. I mean, he used chloroform, gaslighting fumes, even an airless vault to suffocate victims.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
We'll get to who those victims were in a minute.
Okay.
But first, how did he get away with all this for so long? I mean, was law enforcement just incompetent back then?
Not necessarily. You got to remember, rapid urbanization,
Cities booming.
growing so fast, law enforcement struggling to keep up.
And Holmes was cunning.
Oh, incredibly manipulative.
So he's using the chaos of the city.
To his advantage, absolutely. Always one step ahead, aliases, fake identities.
So he preyed on people who were, like, new to the city.
Yeah, isolated, desperate for work, people who wouldn't be missed.
Okay, so let's talk victims. Who were they and what was his MO?
Well, there seems to be a pattern of targeting women, often those he was romantically involved with or
But-
who worked for him.
Like Julia Smythe and her daughter, Pearl?
Right.
Julia was his mistress.
And then they both vanished.
What happened there?
Holmes gave conflicting stories, first claiming Julia went to visit a sick relative,
Okay.
then that she'd run off with another man, later even said she died during an abortion, which, with his limited medical training, seems unlikely.
And Pearl.
A partial skeleton, believed to be hers, was found in the castle cellar.
Oh, wow.
Holmes claimed to have poisoned her, but the exact circumstances are unclear,
But he used his charm to gain Julia's trust.
and then exploited that trust to get rid of them both.
And there's Emmeline Cigrand, his secretary.
Yeah.
She disappears.
Parents are told she eloped.
But then her skeleton turns up at another doctor's house. What's the connection?
That doctor admitted that Holmes had paid him to articulate skeletons.
So not only was he killing, but potentially profiting from the remains.
Right.
That's disturbing.
Yeah.
Then there's the Williams sisters, Minnie and Nanny.
Lured to Chicago with job promises, then they vanish.
And before they disappeared, Minnie transferred the deed to her property to Holmes.
So there's this pattern of financial exploitation woven into the crimes. Not just a killer, but a con man, a master manipulator.
Wow.
Preying on vulnerable people.
And he wasn't just killing women, right? He killed Benjamin Pitzlow.
Yeah.
Who was initially his accomplice in some of these scams.
Right. Pitzel's case is chilling because it shows how far Holmes was willing to go.
To protect himself.
To protect his secrets, no loyalty, not even to his partners in crime.
He staged a lab explosion to make it look like Pitzel died accidentally, then used chloroform on the body after death to fake a suicide.
Meticulous planning.
It shows his cunning.
And his complete lack of remorse.
He wasn't just reacting in the moment.
No, thinking steps ahead, controlling the narrative.
But the story of the Pitzel children is the most heartbreaking.
Yes, Alice, Nellie, and Howard Pitzel, that's where you see the depths of Holmes's cruelty.
He takes custody of these kids, tells their mother they're safe.
While their father's in hiding.
But he's leading her on a wild goose chase.
Keeping her away from her children.
Monstrous.
Preying on a... And what about the Pitzel children? Was Howard still alive? We'll uncover those answers and more when we continue our deep dive into the chilling story of H.H. Holmes.
Stay with us. So, horse theft, huh? I mean, you'd think a criminal mastermind would be a little more careful.
Right. But it wasn't just the horses. The authorities in Texas, where he was hiding out, they were already onto him.
For, like, insurance fraud and stuff?
Yeah, aliases, scams. Once they started digging, they realized this wasn't your average horse thief.
And what about the Pitzel kids? The moms being led on this whole time thinking they're safe.
This is where Detective Frank Geyer comes in. He was investigating the Pitzel case.
Okay.
And he was relentless, followed Holmes's trail across the country like a real-life detective novel.
So good old-fashioned detective work, no fancy DNA testing or anything?
Right. This was the late 1800s. Geyer had to rely on his instincts, his observations, lots of legwork.
But he got results.
He did. Traced Holmes to Toronto. That's where he found the bodies of Alice and Nellie Pitzel.
Oh, those poor girls. What a horrible way to go.
And Geyer wasn't done. He kept going, followed the trail to Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. What was Holmes doing there?
That's where he found Howard Pitzel's remains.
Wait.
Hidden in the chimney.
The chimney. God, that's just evil.
It's hard to even describe.
And through it all, Holmes is just calm, collected, charming.
Never breaks character, even when confronted with the evidence.
Like he was completely detached.
From reality, from guilt, remorse. Yeah, it's what makes him so fascinating.
And terrifying.
Right. This chameleon adapting to any situation, convincing people of anything.
So horse theft was the tripwire, but it was Geyer's work that brought Holmes down.
Absolutely. Geyer deserves all the credit for untangling that web of lies.
Okay, but even with all the evidence, there were still people who believed Holmes escaped execution.
Oh, yeah.
Where did that come from?
You gotta remember, Holmes was a master of illusion.
Creating his own narrative, even in death.
Exactly, like the concrete-filled coffin, buried 10 feet deep.
Was he really that afraid of grave robbers?
That was his reason, yeah. And given his notoriety, it's not totally crazy. Med schools wanted cadavers.
I mean, who wouldn't want to dissect H.H. Holmes?
Right, but it also adds to the mystique, keeps people guessing.
And there were those inconsistencies with his execution.
Yeah, reports his neck didn't break cleanly, that he struggled for a long time.
That's gruesome.
Witnesses claimed to see his body twitching in the coffin afterwards.
So what are the theories? How could he have escaped? Bribes. A body double.
One popular theory is he bribed officials, put a weighted dummy in the noose.
Sounds like a movie.
Right. There are stories about him bragging to inmates about escape plans.
But were those real or just, messing with people?
We'll never know.
But even if you escape the hanging, how do you get out of a concrete-filled coffin?
It'd be incredibly difficult.
That's why most experts dismiss the escape theory, right?
Yeah.
So all those rumors, just wishful thinking.
Seems like it.
But wait, there's more. Right. Didn't they actually exhume his body?
He did, in 2017.
Why? After all those years?
The rumors were persistent. His descendants wanted a definitive answer. The concrete had preserved his body remarkably well, clothes almost intact. Even his mustache was still visible.
Wow.
But more importantly, dental records confirmed it was Holmes.
No escape. He really died on the gallows.
Yeah.
But still, it's fascinating that those rumors persisted for so long.
Right.
Why are we so drawn to the idea of him outsmarting everyone, even death?
I think it speaks to our fascination with criminal masterminds, the idea that someone so cunning could defy the odds.
We always want to believe he got away with it.
Maybe, or maybe it's a way of coping with the horror of it all.
If he escaped, then maybe evil can't be contained.
That there's this wildness, this unpredictability we can't control.
He becomes a symbol of our deepest fears.
Of the darkness lurking beneath the surface.
Okay, so escape debunked. But the big question remains, why? What made Herman Webster Mudgett become H.H. Holmes?
The million-dollar question, and there are no easy answers.
But we can look for clues, right? His childhood, relationships, his crimes.
And what his legacy tells us about our own fascination with true crime.
The dark side of human nature.
Exactly. We'll explore all that and more as we continue our deep dive into the world of H.H. Holmes.
Stay with us. All right, so we've laid it all out. The facts, the myths, but the big one remains, right? What turned Herman Webster Mudgett into H.H. Holmes, the Beast of Chicago?
Yeah, it'd be easy to just say born evil and move on, but...
It doesn't really explain it.
No, it doesn't. And what gets me is a lot of people who knew him said he was charming.
Charming.
Charismatic, even.
But how do you square that with everything else?
It's like he had two sides, the charming doctor, businessman, and then this...
It's scary, right? Evil doesn't always wear a sign.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the enduring appeal, right? This idea that anyone could have a dark side.
Makes you think, was he born this way? Or did something happen?
Psychologists still debate that. Some point to his childhood, the skeleton thing, the interest in death.
But couldn't that just be, kid stuff? Lots of kids are morbid. Doesn't mean they'll be serial killers.
True, but for Holmes, maybe those interests lined up with his personality.
Who was?
Smart, ambitious, sure, but also lacking empathy, a real skewed sense of right and wrong.
And med school probably didn't help.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Surrounded by death, dissection, he starts to see the body as just a thing.
To manipulate, to use.
Right, and don't forget the con man aspect. This guy could charm anyone.
Build trust, then use it against you.
It's possible even he didn't know how dark he could be.
Well, maybe it's nature and nurture, right? The personality, the skills, and then Chicago.
The perfect environment.
The late 1800s, everything changing, cities exploding, but also anonymity.
Opportunity for someone like Holmes.
He was a predator. He knew how to use the chaos.
He became a symbol, in a way, of the dark side of progress.
Like, yeah, we're building these great cities, but what's lurking beneath?
Right, and that fear keeps his story alive. He's more than just a historical figure now.
He's like a boogeyman, a warning.
And his story's been told so many times, books, documentaries, movies.
The Devil in the White City. That one really brought him back into the public eye.
And he's inspired fictional characters, too.
There's even that theory he was Jack the Ripper.
Oh, yeah, but is there proof? Not really.
Just speculation.
But it shows you the power of the story, right? That it can spark those ideas.
It's like his legend has become bigger than the truth.
And that's something to be careful of. With true crime, it's easy to get swept up in the mystery, the gore.
But we got to remember, these are real people, real victims.
Absolutely. And there's a danger in making these figures romantic,
Holmes was a killer, not some anti-hero.
Right. Cold-blooded. His crimes were horrific. We can't forget that.
But even as we condemn him, there's something to learn here.
About human nature, the fact that evil can look like anything.
And we got to be vigilant, protect ourselves and others.
So what have we learned from our deep dive into H.H. Holmes? He was complex, a master manipulator.
Able to charm, to betray in the worst ways imaginable.
His story is a product of its time, the anxieties of a changing world.
And his legacy lives on, reminding us that evil can hide anywhere, that we need to be cautious, compassionate.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Remember, true crime is more than just entertainment.
It's a look into the human mind.
A mirror to our own fears. Keep that in mind as you explore these stories.
Engage thoughtfully, critically, and with empathy.
Exact.
And until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.